This programme it's about everyone watching. It's an interactive programme.
Well, there absolutely is something to see here, and we're going to be talking about it more.
Whether it's breaking royal news,
Please bring us up to date.
or indeed a particularly punchy speech in the House of Commons,
Very, very curious.
we bring it to you live, and then we bring you live reaction as well.
That's Good Afternoon Britain, weekdays from midday.
Only on GBNews, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
It's Patrick Christie's Tonight, and here we do things differently.
It's explaining the absolute madness of this, doesn't it?
It's explosive.
I mean, this is very good.
It's lively.
850. Your government sat there, Sean, and it did nothing.
It's controversial.
And the Middle East has been in turmoil since before I was born.
It's everything you need to kickstart your evening.
Everyone's had their Weetabix tonight. I love to see it.
That's Patrick Christie's Tonight, weeknights from 9 p.m. Only on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Good evening, everybody. You're watching State of the Nation tonight on GB News with me, Matt Goodwin, speaking up for the forgotten majority, as always, on tonight's show. The Sentencing Council today has rejected calls from the Justice Secretary to change guidance that recommends judges consider a criminal's ethnicity before deciding their punishment. Now, we're set to bring you the Reform UK local election campaign launch live tonight. Woke gone mad. The London Museum is urging staff to tackle the issue of, get this, whiteness as part of a new diversity initiative. And independent candidate success continues to rise following the 2024 general election. But what does this mean for the future of our democracy and political landscape? State of the Nation tonight with me, Matt Goodwin, starts right now. Now, I'll be joined tonight by my top panel, media strategist Andy Twelves and political commentator Aman Bogle. As ever, let me know your views at gbnews.com/your say. You can also reach out over on X at GoodwinMJ. But right now, it's time for the News Bulletin with Sam Francis.
Very good evening to you. The top story tonight at 8 o'clock. Rescue teams are racing to find survivors after a powerful 7.7 magnitude earthquake struck central Myanmar, killing, we now know, at least 144 people. Hundreds more are injured and entire buildings have collapsed, with neighbouring Thailand also hit by the tremors. In Bangkok, an unfinished high-rise crumbled, leaving 6 people dead and around 100 construction workers missing. Drones, sniffer dogs and diggers are scouring the rubble for signs of life. But with Myanmar under military rule since a coup in 2021, reliable information from the epicentre remains scarce. The head of the government's counter-terror programme, Prevent, has stepped down today after a review criticised failures in the case of Southport killer Axel Rudakabana. Michael Stewart is understood to have left following findings that Prevent closed his case too early, despite multiple warnings and police calls. The report said Rudakabana showed a real interest in terrorism, including researching school shootings. It also flagged missed chances to escalate his case to a more intensive stage of intervention. The Home Secretary has now announced a public inquiry into any missed opportunities to stop him. King Charles has been seen in public today for the first time after a brief hospital stay linked to temporary side effects from his cancer treatment. He was spotted waving to crowds as he left Clarence House early this morning, heading to Highgrove for the weekend. The King cancelled a visit to Birmingham, though, and meetings with ambassadors on medical advice, but is said to be feeling much better. The palace described it, though, as a minor bump in the road and says he hopes to resume duties next week. A political row is intensifying over new sentencing guidelines for judges in England and Wales, set to begin on Tuesday. The Sentencing Council says the rules aim to address disparities between white and non-white offenders, but ministers say they risk creating a two-tier justice system. Shabana Mahmood, the Justice Secretary, is now calling for a rethink, warning of differential treatment, but the Council has refused. Downing Street, meanwhile, says all options are now on the table, including new legislation to block the changes. Well, earlier, the Prime Minister told GB News the advice should be changed. Here's what he had to say to our political editor, Chris Hope.
Well, look, I'm disappointed in this response, and the Lord Chancellor is obviously continuing to engage on this, and we're considering our response. And, you know, all options are on the table, but I am disappointed at this outcome, and now we'll have to consider what we do as a result.
Meanwhile, Shabana Mahmood, the Justice Secretary, has opened a new £400 million super prison in Yorkshire that can hold up to 1,500 inmates. Category C jail HMP Millsike is the size of 39 football pitches and is part of the government's drive to create 14,000 extra prison places. Reports suggest inmates will help name the cell blocks and have a say in how the prison is run. It's also been designed with pastel paint and greenery to promote well-being and to reduce bad behaviour. And W.H. Smith is vanishing from the high street after more than 2 centuries. All 480 of its shops have been snapped up in a £76 million deal. They'll be rebranded as T.G. Jones, with all 5,000 staff moving to its new owners. W.H. Smith isn't disappearing completely, though. It is keeping its airport and train station branches. But for town centres, well, it's the end of the road. After 230 years, the W.H. Smith sign is finally coming down. Those are the latest headlines for now. I'll be back with you in an hour's time. Now, though, it's back to State of the Nation.
For the very latest GB News direct to your smartphone, sign up to News Alerts by scanning the QR code or go to gbnews.com/alerts.
Welcome back to State of the Nation tonight on GB News with me, Matt Goodwin. Now, the two-tier justice row is continuing to rumble on in Westminster, and it's now only 3 days until what's been dubbed two-tier sentencing guidelines coming to force in this country. These guidelines would see judges told to consider the ethnicity, religion and even gender identity of a criminal when deciding how long they'll spend in prison. The pressure is also mounting on the Justice Secretary, Shabana Mahmood, to find a way to halt these guidelines. But today, the Sentencing Council has slapped her down, and the Labour government refusing to revise them. Tories say Mahmood has been humiliated, and instead of asking the Sentencing Council nicely, Shabana Mahmood should have legislated instead, passing emergency legislation. But look, I think almost everywhere we look in modern Britain today, we see growing evidence that we are living in a two-tier society. It began, of course, with the government's woeful response to the Southport atrocities. Keir Starmer, the man who took the knee for Black Lives Matter, don't forget, decided to brutally crack down on rioters and protesters in this country. Some people, of course, being thrown into jail for what they wrote on Facebook in their own home. Then the Prime Minister reportedly decided to withhold information from the public about Axel Rudakabana, claiming that it would prejudice his trial. And then just yesterday, we saw shocking, in my opinion, two-tier justice, where immigration offenders may now get off lightly under new woke guidance that could let hundreds of foreign criminals avoid deportation. This comes as YouGov commissioned a poll asking, would you support or oppose judges taking into consideration when sentencing whether an offender is from an ethnic, religious or cultural minority? Well, as you just saw on the screen, a stark 72% of people opposed this two-tier approach to justice. Only 13% would support this, just 13%. With this much public opposition, surely, I say, it would make sense to pass emergency laws to make sure that everybody in this country is equal under the law. Is that not what makes us Britain after all? But is it already too late to stop two-tier sentencing? Still with me is media strategist Andy Twelves and political commentator Aman Bogle. Let's get their thoughts. Aman, the clock is ticking. The two-tier sentencing guidelines are about to come in. Is there anything that Shabana Mahmood and the Labour government can do to save face on this?
Quite simple, really. They are the party in government. They have a huge majority. They should be abolishing this ridiculous quango. And my question is, why do we have this outrageous so-called sentencing council in the first place? Our MPs, is our parliament not good enough to be giving these guidelines in the first place? And let's be honest, why do we have these anti-white, anti-Christian, anti-national, to be frank, guidelines given? How is it that the country which is a synonym for the rule of law, equality before that rule of law, and impartial justice, now what are we having? We are having the rule of these anti-national vote brigade marching through our institutions. And more than that, this is bias in law. This is the definition of two-tier justice, and it has no place in Britain.
Andy, no place in Britain?
I think the Sentencing Council certainly shouldn't be abolished. There is, good reason that we have our independent bodies at the CPS, Sentencing Council. There is good reason. So then the government of the day can't enact kind of political justice against their enemies. There is good reason for that.
They should be accountable, though, shouldn't they?
They should be accountable, absolutely. But I don't think they should be abolished. I think, Shabana Mahmood has made it clear, Keir Starmer has made it clear that the government are not happy with the response from the Sentencing Council, and they probably will be seeking advice in the next couple of days to introduce that emergency legislation to override this.
What about this claim that Robert Jenrick has made, namely that people migrants who break our laws will use the sentencing guidelines to avoid deportation because their sentences will be less than 12 months?
I mean, I'm sure that the solicitors that represent these migrants will be, looking at every opportunity given to them, because why wouldn't you? That's what you pay a solicitor or employ a barrister for, is to, defend you as well as they can before the law. So, you can't have a go at these solicitors for going through these loopholes when they exist.
Yeah. Now, man, here's what I'm wondering, and I think many people out there are wondering. The original two-tier sentencing guidelines essentially came out of a project that was overseen by David Lammy, OK? Yes. So the establishment is kicking and screaming today saying, oh, this is terrible, we're going to take action. But the reality is they've actually known this was coming down the line for about 7-8 years when actually David Lammy started to make this. So here again, you've got people kind of positioning, trying to impress the British people. Keir Starmer today, he's very disappointed by these guidelines. But actually, they've known this was coming for years.
Well, not just that, Matt. I mean, I did a bit of digging up in this earlier, and I found that Theresa May, when she became Prime Minister in 2016, the first things she said when she stood on the steps of Number 10 was she was really quite amazed and appreciative of David Lammy's review, because she said, if you're black, you are more likely to be harshly treated by the criminal justice system than if you're white. So this has been a cross-party political consensus against the British people that somehow what is broken is not why we have higher offending rates amongst black youth, certainly in London, but that they're getting too harshly treated by the judges who are supposed to be impartial in the first place. So this is a real rot that has set into a system. And to be honest, as Andy was saying, these are not independent councils. I mean, that's really, for the fairies. These are not independent councils. These are councils that need to be abolished. Accountability, democracy, that's what matters.
Andy, it does seem that this Labour government is on a collision course with this notion of fairness in this country, notion of fair play, that whether it's a two-tier justice system, whether it's illegal migration, the boats, of course, we've learned this week, the boats are up nearly 40% on the same time last year, not to mention the fact that we just discovered we're spending £7.5 billion supporting welfare for people who have not born in the UK, while we're cutting welfare for British pensioners, British disadvantaged people here. There's a sense of unfairness out there in the country, isn't there? And that's what is especially problematic for this Labour government.
Well, I mean, just on the welfare point, they're receiving it because they're British citizens. You can't receive welfare if you're not a British citizen. Not in those statistics. It was British citizens, so they might not have been born here, but they are legally British citizens. So you can't really do much about that unless you have a tier system of citizen of being born here citizen and then not being born here citizen, which is you get into murky waters there. But realistically, I think Keir Starmer has been clear about this. He wasn't impressed with the response from the Sentencing Council. Shabana Mahmood made a statement. She's not impressed. Well, they're taking legal advice, and they're probably going to introduce emergency legislation.
We have a cabinet full of lawyers. What legal advice do these lawyers need?
Well, they need extra. Well, we don't have a cabinet full of lawyers at all.
I mean, it's interesting, isn't it, that Keir Starmer was a human rights lawyer, and even he is saying he's disappointed by the outcome. That's a pretty clear sign that something fundamentally here has gone wrong. Now, of course, people within the legal system would say, when it goes back to those immigration offenders, that actually these sentencing guidelines won't be used to give them unduly harsh sentences. So, I mean, there are people out there who would say that. But I think it's important to stress that this Labour government, again, go back to that point of unfairness, I think there are millions of people probably watching this show out there thinking that it isn't actually just about this sentencing guideline issue. More generally, it's this notion that our sense of fair play that defines our culture in this country, that everybody upholds the rule of law, everybody makes contributions, everybody trusts one another, and we're all part of the shared community, that is what is breaking down.
Well, yeah, I mean, this isn't just, the last 9 months of the Labour government, though. I mean, let's make that clear. This has been something that's been going on for decades. Since Thatcher took to the communities, the pit communities and the steel communities in the 80s. Whether it was, Blair with his migration in the early 2000s, whether it was austerity throughout the 2010s. There have been fundamental attacks on communities throughout our nation, on both Labour and Conservative. So let's not make it a Keir Starmer thing.
I think that's entirely unreasonable to say that. Look, Labour is the party which has been boosting nothing other than sectarianism and identity politics politics. And this is what they're playing with the British public right now. They are creating a two-tier justice system. It's now there in black and white.
In what way are they? They've disavowed the decision by the Sentencing Council.
But
so how is it the Labour government?
Yes, this is the government.
How is it their fault? You said it's been going on for 7 years. That was under a Tory government for 6 and a bit of those
Yes, and
years.
I'm calling them out on that. You're not calling out.
But how is it Labour's entirely Labour's fault?
Because they've been in power for the last 9 months. What have they done to deal with it?
What did the Tories do in the last 6.5 years?
No.
That's the question.
Labour
they were in government 6.5 years whilst this thing was going on.
Shabana Mahmood claims that this is unjust. This is a two-tier justice. She's the Justice Secretary right now. The country needs answers. The nation wants to know what the Labour government is going to do. It's got 2 days before it kicks in. And the whole world is watching, by the way, Matt. The whole world is watching, the home of the Magna Carta and the home of the country which gave so much of the world common law. And what are we doing?
I don't think the world is watching.
The world is watching.
Let's be realistic. We've had JD Vance saying Europe's got a free speech crisis, the UK's got a free speech crisis.
Haven't they been throwing out journalists from the White House because they don't agree with the Trump administration's language? I think JD Vance needs to figure out free speech at home before he criticises us.
Let's be realistic. There are very senior politicians at the top level of politics who are saying from the outside, from Southport onwards, it looks like the UK has a fundamental problem with free speech. And to be frank, we do have a problem with free speech.
It's not just been from Southport. I mean, the Tory government, the last Tory government implemented one of the most, sensible pieces of legislation against protesters in this country's history.
The Online Digital Act.
No, not the Online Safety Act. What's it called? The Protesting Act that was enacted for just to boil protesters, but had knock-on effects on people on picket lines, people who were actually peacefully protesting in town squares. It made it so that police could arrest them just for disturbing the peace, for standing there. Let's not pretend this started with Keir Starmer.
No, for sure.
Look, the root of all of this is David Lemmy. And let's be honest, anything that David Lemmy touches, turns to dust in any case. Look, he stood up there when he stood up as Foreign Secretary. What did he have to say? He didn't say, oh, I'm proud to be the British Foreign Secretary. He said, I'm here as the first black Foreign Secretary. And even that he didn't get right. I mean, that was James Cleverly, mind you. But this is what we're dealing with. This is what we're dealing with. So let's not kid ourselves. The British public are watching. The rest of the world is watching that what on earth is happening to the home of real justice. That is Britain.
There is a growing concern, isn't there, out there in the country that this sort of identity obsession is infiltrating quite a lot of the institutions. I mean, lots of people, myself included, probably asking what happened to meritocracy, that you get as far as you put in, that it's about working hard, it's not about which group you belong to. And if you find yourself standing in front of a judge, it's not what group you are, whether you're transgender or a member of an ethnic minority group, it's what you did that should ultimately determine what sentence you receive in prison. But somewhere along the line, those ideas of meritocracy, of equality before the law, became completely corrupted by this identity politics that I think many people out there are saying, well, this doesn't really feel very British to me.
Sure, and I think, Keir Starmer does agree. He's actually...
Does he agree?
He's disavowed what the Sentencing Council
said.
He said that
What's he going to do about it?
Well, I mean, I'm sure they're going to introduce emergency legislation. She said
they've had 9 months.
She's taking advice on it.
If Robert Jenrick was not holding the government's feet to the fire, let's be honest...
Robert Jenrick couldn't even win an election within his own party, let alone get the trust of the nation. So I think Robert Jenrick can pipe down a little bit.
Put this on the agenda, and has been holding Labour's feet to the fire on the Shadow Justice Secretary. Where was Shabana Mahmood for the last 9 months? She knew this was coming. If she really stands against it, what is she doing about it? A minute to midnight, where is Labour?
Well, I mean, they followed the due process. They followed the due process. The due process is to write a letter from the minister responsible to the independent body. That's the due process.
The country is sick and tired of Sir Humphrey Appleby talk. We're going to push a file. We're going to try this. It's under active consideration. No, it's not.
And what would Robert Jenrick do? Would Robert Jenrick abolish the Sentencing Council?
Well, that's what he said.
Would he?
Well, of course he would.
With
Why not?
I mean, he's not even the leader of his own party. He's got 120 MPs in opposition. He was in government for the last 14 years. What did he do to the Sentencing Council? What quangos did he abolish when he was minister?
Indeed, and I think obviously the debate over what to do next is going to rumble on, that's for sure. Now, new question in the room. Has woke gone mad? The London Museum is urging staff to tackle the issue of whiteness. Here we go again. As part of a new diversity initiative, we're going to be talking about that in a couple of minutes and looking at what on earth is happening in some of our institutions. I'll see you shortly.
Westminster, the ultimate clique.
And you're fighting like rats in a sack.
But here on the Camilla Tominey Show, we ask the questions the establishment media is too scared to ask.
OK, let me ask you a straight question, because I know you're a straight-talking politician.
Whether it's net zero, illegal immigration or law and order, nothing is off limits.
You had the power then.
Yeah, as I
and
say,
now you've lost it.
That's the Camilla Tominey Show, a politics show that's fearless.
But no, let me finish my question if you don't mind, because it is my show.
Sundays at 9:30, only on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Britain's newsroom, weekday mornings from 9:30.
I ended up being hospitalised, and I was diagnosed with it within the first few days of being in hospital. I was in hospital for 2 months, and I came out about 13 months ago, something like that. And I realised that there are people that aren't as lucky as me that don't have that platform to be able to talk about it, bring it out in the public. And deal with the stigma, because there is still a stigma.
A lot of people don't really know what bipolar is. So in you, Heston, how did it manifest itself?
It's funny because before the diagnosis, I mean, everything, many things, from thinking the TV was talking to me to hallucinating stuff. The downside is suicidal thoughts, which seemed normal at the time. The upside is the thing there's grandiosity, somewhere between Superman and Jesus Christ.
Wow.
Save the world, love everybody, everything is fantastic. And then it comes crashing down. It's a bit like a toddler, you know, an overexcited child. And when a kid gets overexcited, and then something happens, and then they start crying.
Wow. So massive highs, big lows.
Yeah, but I thought everything was normal. It's only now that I've come out the other side, so to speak, that I look back and can see some of the character traits. I mean, my patience levels were almost non-existent before. I'm a lot more patient. I'm talking much slower. I was talking very quickly.
GB News, the People's Channel.
Headliners on GB News 11 p.m. every night. It's got 3 top comedians going through the next day's newspapers so you don't have to read them, which is great.
That's a good point. He's lying. I mean, maybe he's not lying.
That's Headliners every night from 11 p.m. and 5 a.m. as well on GB News, Britain's news channel.
Welcome back to State of the Nation tonight with me, Matt Goodwin, on GB News. Now, just when you thought Britain could not get more bonkers, the London Museum is urging staff to tackle the issue of whiteness as part of a new diversity initiative. A pamphlet has been created to help employees challenge racial inequalities and promote inclusivity. The museum aims to become genuinely anti-racist by addressing hierarchical working and fostering open conversations on race equity. I know. Still with me is media strategist Andy Twells and political commentator Aman Bogle. Aman, look, what the hell's going on in our institutions? Because here we are again, another elite institution, a London Museum, talking about whiteness, talking about anti-racism, talking about racial inequalities. It all sounds to me, actually, rather racist against white people.
Well, this is critical race theory bigotry. That's what this is. And I suppose I can throw a spanner in their works by saying I claim tonight to be white, self-identifying as a white Englishman. What would they say to that? I mean, that's...
Well, they'll throw you on a compulsory training course if you say that.
Well, there you go. So that's the level of bonkers we're dealing with there. Yeah. But again, if you delve down a bit deeper into this, Matt, what they're really talking about is actual racism, not just against white people, but also against people of other ethnic minorities. By how do they define whiteness? So what they're saying is that if you are disciplined, if you're accustomed to working in a hierarchical setup, then somehow you're white. And somehow, if you're not white, you can't work in a hierarchical, disciplined structure. To me, that sounds absolutely not just bonkers, but also that's peddling division in a way that...
So if you're a member of a minority group, they're saying you cannot work in a hierarchical structure because that would be exposing you to racism.
Yes, exactly. I mean...
So where are how are they supposed to work? What, just free-flowing employees doing whatever they want?
Well, that's exactly what critical race theory tells these organisations to do. This is exactly what we were seeing in the last 10 years, 5 years, coming through all these DEI programmes that are now, all of a sudden, being pulled, certainly in the US, because, lo and behold, it doesn't work. Secondly, it's racist. And thirdly, more importantly, it divides people along the very lines that they're saying shouldn't be divided.
Andy, do you think they're even thinking about what ordinary people out there are thinking and feeling? Because, you know, why on earth would I take my family to the London Museum to look at exhibitions which continuously complain about who I am and my ancestors and my country? Why would I do that? I mean, it's such an extreme ideological project among a kind of elite minority within the institutions. It's left many people out there saying, well, if you're going to treat us this way, why on earth would we ever support you?
Yeah, I mean, absolutely. I mean, I'm a trade union man by background, and, you know, HR is the existential enemy of the trade unions, really, even more than the bosses. And this is just HR nonsense, really. I
don't think it is. I think that's being too light on them. Is it HR or is it actually ideological? Is this actually rooted, as Aman was saying, in critical race theory, CRT, which is invading our schools, invading universities, invading our public sector, taxpayer-funded institutions, and which says that if you are a member of a minority group, you are morally, essentially superior to members of the white majority. And so because of that, what they want to do is level down the white majority in Western nations by implying that they are inherently problematic, inherently evil or suspicious, hence all of the talk about whiteness and white privilege. There is something wrong with you, but minorities are absolutely virtuous and superior. It's ideological, isn't it? It's not just some crazy HR officer waxing lyrical during their lunch break. This is an ideological project designed to level down Western nations.
I think it is hard to say, because obviously we don't know who's behind this at the London Museum. This could be, you know, like you said, just some HR officer just trying to do their bit, trying to check boxes, or it could be, you know, someone who's, you know, related to a larger charity or a larger trust that does push CRT. We don't actually know, you know, the story, the source story doesn't actually delve into that too deeply. But I mean, I think the only real privilege we should be talking about is class privilege. That's the only identity I'm really interested in. I think the rest, you know, I'm quite Marxist in that sense, that the only real identity that matters is class identity. And, you know, CRT just doesn't sit right with me.
Now, I've got a question, Aman, which is something I've never quite understood. America's pulling back on all of this. Trump's saying enough of this diversity, equity and inclusion, because it's absolute nonsense. Diversity means celebrating every form of diversity except diversity of thought. Equity means forcing equal outcomes among groups while discriminating against the white majority. And inclusion means including as many perspectives as possible, except those of conservative, gender-critical voices. So let's be clear what we mean by DEI. But Trump's rooting it out. So why is he rooting it out? And America's saying enough is enough, and some parts of Europe are also pushing back, and we seem to be doubling down on this gobbledygook.
Well, let's be honest. I mean, in America, DEI is going to die. And it's doing that because, well, people saw what happened under Biden and Kamala Harris. And it wasn't just in terms of an ideological warfare that was being inflicted on the American people, but it's more than that. It was affecting people's bottom line.
Absolutely.
And let's not forget what happened with Boeing. Right, when you're hiring people not because of merit and what they've learned and what they can contribute to a company, when you're hiring them because of the colour of their skin or what gender they might identify as, well, then the whole capitalist system, in terms of providing prosperity, collapses.
I mean, I think if I was taking an aeroplane, I would quite like the employees to be part of a hierarchical structure, because God knows what's going to happen. Another example is defund the police. I mean, Andy, I read a study, academic study, that looked at what happened when police authorities pulled back from areas in America after the woke progressive elite said defund the police. And what happened was violence and murder went up dramatically, so much so that this study estimates that 3,000 African Americans lost their lives after 2020 who would not otherwise have lost their lives were it not for this police pullback. I mean, I don't want to be too controversial here, although I do, as you know, like provoking people, but the reality is actually, as Aman says, woke can have disastrous consequences. This isn't just a sort of online culture war. This thing can kill people.
Yeah, so I mean, you know, the prime example in America is Chicago. You know, they removed almost all their police function, and, you know, crime rates skyrocketed, even higher than Chicago was previously. I think, you know, in Keir Starmer's Labour Party, there is a pretty wide range of diverse thought. It's not like Corbyn's Labour, which was more predominantly the woke left. I think there is a lot more of that kind of traditional old left of the right of the Labour Party. Not the Blairites, but certainly the Brownites are back in power. And I think as Amin said, DEI is here to die. I think it would be hard for Keir Starmer and the leadership of the Labour Party to ignore what Trump's doing the other side of the ocean.
Just briefly, I mean, what should ordinary taxpayers out there be doing in response to some of these stories? Because I have to say, my instinctive reaction when I read this nonsense, because it does actually infuriate me, these are taxpayer-funded institutions that are then using our own money to denigrate our nation, and that's what I find particularly appalling.
Indeed.
I mean, so let me just again be slightly provocative. Is it actually time that we start talking about things like boycotting some of these institutions, not going to these institutions, not giving more of our money to these institutions?
Well, look, far from the government actually doing anything sensible to address any of this, I think I'm a big believer in the free market. I think people ought to be literally voting with their wallets by not showing their allegiance with the likes of the London Museum or we had English heritage previously, right? They want to decolonize so much of our heritage. So I think people have to make their voice heard, and the way to do it is by look, it is the forgotten majority, as you say, Matt, and they have to make their voice heard, and the best way to do that is to make sure that such things are not given any traction.
And I think the thing that makes me particularly nervous about all of this is actually CRT is now affecting schools. So we're now teaching kids this nonsense. Primary schools, secondary schools, universities. CRT has gone from being a fringe idea in the universities in the 1960s and 70s that has sort of trickled out into the institutions. A lot of these ideas, whiteness, white privilege, I saw in universities for 20 years. I saw students in the UK being forced to take mandatory testing and training on anti-racism. But what they mean by anti-racism is not what Martin Luther King meant, which was colourblind anti-racism. What they mean is anti-racism by discriminating against whites.
Sure. And I think, part of what Bridget Phillipson is doing at the DFE, ensuring that academies have to come back into the national curriculum, enforcing more legislation on academy trusts. I think that will bring kind of the power back to the government to, be able to enforce stuff like this.
Well, we did reach out to the British Museum and we did ask them for a response. We are awaiting their response, so I look forward to getting one in due course. Until then, I, for one, will not be visiting the London Museum. Anyway, an English-speaking tourist is being praised as a hero after tackling a knifeman who injured 5 people, including 2 Americans in Amsterdam. This guy really was a hero. You want to check this out? I'll see you in a couple of minutes.
Dinner under the stars tonight?
That reminds me of our travel insurance.
You mean All Clear Skies?
All Clear Travel Insurance sponsors GB News travel destinations forecast.
Unsettled weather across central parts of the Mediterranean with heavy showers and possibly some thunderstorms. But after all, the rain across Spain and Portugal turning much drier here, and with plenty of prolonged blue skies too as the Azores highs stretches across Spain and Portugal. But as we move our way further east, heavy showers, some longer outbreaks of rain, and this could turn heavy with some hail and thunder. Now into next week, it's turning a little bit brighter, more sunshine around, and feeling a little bit warmer too, with the best of the temperatures across Tenerife.
All Clear Travel Insurance sponsors GB News travel destinations forecast.
Exciting news. Every Friday, my Patrick Christie's Tonight Show is going to have a twist to it. We're welcoming some special guests. You. That's right, on Fridays I'm going to be doing my show in front of a live studio audience, because this show is about you and what you have to say. It's going to be the same big debates, same big topics, same big opinions. But every Friday night at 9 p.m, you are invited to come on down to Patrick Christie's Tonight to be a part of the action. Only on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Hi, I'm Michelle Dewberry, and my show is your opportunity to cut through all the noise and dive in headfirst to some robust debates. Ideas clash.
Situation, isn't it?
Because
the failure is...
You're deliberately avoiding my point. Nothing's held back.
And if you think this is the end of it, wait for more.
And we do not shy away from the difficult stuff.
Sometimes I want to shake people and say, if only you understood.
So join me on Dubes & Co. weeknights at 6 p.m, only on GB News, Britain's news channel.
The royal family is an enduring symbol of tradition, unity and pride for Britain.
At GB News, we celebrate what makes this country great. In our new Royal Newsletter series, you can join me, Cameron Walker, for Inside the Palace, an exclusive look every week that takes you beyond the gates and brings you the very latest from those at the heart of the monarchy. Never miss a royal moment again. Sign up now. Go to gbnews.com/royal newsletter and get the latest straight to your inbox.
Good Afternoon Britain isn't just about us. The wonderful thing about this programme is it's about everyone watching. It's an interactive programme.
Well, there absolutely is something to see here, and we're going to be talking about it more.
Whether it's breaking royal news,
please bring us up to date.
Or indeed a particularly punchy speech in the House of Commons.
Very, very curious.
We bring it to you live, and then we bring you live reaction as well.
That's Good Afternoon Britain, weekdays from midday.
Only on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Mornings don't have to be tiresome, especially if you have the right company.
Wake up to news as it happens, opinion and debate, and of course, a little bit of entertainment too.
Because when the kettle's on, we're on.
That's Breakfast on GB News, a show worth waking up for.
Every morning from 6 a.m.
Only on the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
We'll spread the news, you spread the word.
It's Patrick Christie's Tonight, and here we do things differently. It's explaining the absolute madness of this, doesn't it? It's explosive. I mean, this is very good. It's lively.
850. Your government sat there, Sean, and it did nothing.
It's controversial. And the Middle East has been in turmoil since before I was born. It's everything you need to kickstart your evening. Everyone's had their Weetabix tonight. I love to see it. That's Patrick Christie's Tonight, weeknights from 9 p.m. Only on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Welcome back to State of the Nation tonight on GB News with me, Matt Goodwin. Now, you've been sending in your views about some of the stories we've just been discussing. On two-tier justice, Katie English says, I don't care if you're black, white, yellow, pink, green, etc. If you break the law, you should suffer the consequences. Katie, I completely agree. Catherine, regarding the London Museum whiteness story, says all these things, including the National Trust, should be disbanded. And Zaphod says, how about all white people boycott these institutions if that's how they feel about whiteness? Good idea. Well, let's move on now. A positive story in a sense, certainly about courage. An English-speaking tourist is being praised today as a hero after tackling a knifeman who injured 5 people, including 2 Americans in Amsterdam. Yes, this happened again in Europe. Seems every week we have one of these horrific stories. The attacker, armed with multiple knives, went on a rampage near Dam Square, popular hotspot in Amsterdam. Dramatic footage circulating online today shows a man restraining the assailant until police arrived. Authorities are investigating the motive and the suspect is in custody, thank goodness. Local reports claim that the man who tackled him spoke English, and it's believed that the man is British, but the police have yet to confirm where he is from. The mayor of Amsterdam, Femke Halsema, has given a Hero's Medal to the mystery hero. Still with me in the studio tonight is media strategist Andy Twelves and political commentator Arman Bogle. Arman, here's a question. Firstly, this guy obviously should be applauded, should have every medal under the sun. God knows, I mean, how much courage is required to actually intervene and bring one of these lunatics to justice. But why are members of the public having to intervene and deal with this? Why are these guys still running amok in Europe?
Well, let's be honest. I mean, first of all, it took an Englishman to come save the day, but I was quite surprised that he wasn't arrested by the police for having outraged the human rights of this lunatic attacker. But this is sort of underlines what we're facing here in Europe and the UK. The human rights of unvetted foreign men who have come in from all over the place. We have no idea why they're here. A lot of them hate us for who we are. Well, this is what's going to happen. And this is what we're dealing with. But the bottom line here is, Matt, that not a single one of these people should be in Europe, certainly not in the UK. And until we have mass deportations of every single unvetted foreign man, that is not meant to be here, it's not going to change.
Yeah. Now, Andy, we have seen Europe getting tough on migration. We talked about it on the show last night. The European Commission is talking about having returns hubs for illegal migrants. Italy is having reopening return hubs in Albania for illegal migrants. Germany's getting tough on migration. Poland has just said it's no longer going to be taking claims for asylum on the border with Belarus. So Europe seems to be shifting rightwards on migration. We're not, it appears, under the Labour government. But is this enough? Can Europe actually get its act together when it comes to stopping these Islamist maniacs running amok in European nations?
I mean, it's reasonably difficult because of how the EU is set up, because you basically have no real formal borders in between countries. You've got free movement. It's extremely hard once you're in one of these European countries to stop them going across, the continent. I don't really know what the solution is.
Well, that's part of the story, but isn't a bigger part of the story that from 2015 especially, we basically took in millions of people who, to be frank, not all of them, but some of them, hate who we are. They hate our ways of life. They certainly hate our values and our non-Islamic religion, if indeed we are Christian, Hindu, Sikh, etc. Isn't that the fundamental problem here?
I think that's a small minority. I think the majority of the people, I've worked with them in construction and in Westminster, in the trade union movement, in our international ties. Lots of them are extremely hard-working people who want to come here to build a better life.
But there's always a similar dynamic. Aman, please.
We don't owe these people a better life. This is exactly the difference we're talking about between globalists and nationalists. We want to put the national interest first. We have got 9.4 million people who are economically inactive in this country. We don't need builders from countries 5,000 miles away with foreign cultures who bring nothing to our nation other than take. Let's be honest. How many of these people are remitting money back to the countries they actually call home? What affinity do they have with
If they're paying taxes in the UK, why do you care what they do with the money? I thought you were a free marketeer, you believed in liberty. Surely once they've paid tax on their money, they can do whatever they want.
Okay, how many are paying tax? How many are paying getting universal credit?
You can receive universal credit when you're in work. I know lots and lots of people who are in full-time employment that receive benefits. So that's a bit of a silly argument.
It's not a silly argument because if you've only been here for 2 minutes, you haven't paid anything into the system. So how on earth, who is paying for that universal credit?
So how long do you have to work for before you're able to take benefits? Should children who have never paid tax be able to, take on the NHS? Should they be able to go to school?
That's a bigger question.
Is that the question?
Why do we have hundreds of thousands of students, so-called students, bringing in dependents?
No, so children haven't contributed anything to the system.
Yes,
Are they allowed to get, free education from the taxpayer? Surely on your rules of if you've not paid in, you shouldn't get anything else.
Yes,
surely school children shouldn't be allowed to go to school.
Of course, children.
That's not very clever, is it?
Of course, our children should be going to school, but we shouldn't be paying for the world's children to be going to school.
Well, we're not.
Yes, we are.
I mean, we're not objectively.
We of course are.
But that breaks down your argument about, well, if you don't pay in, then you shouldn't be able to take out. What about English people who have never worked there in their life? Should they be able to have benefits? Because they're ours. Are they allowed to?
Yes, of course, because they're ours. That's the whole point of a nation state.
So you're advocating for people being lazy and never working in their entire life? That's not very good.
On the contrary, I'm advocating for the 9.4 million economically inactive to start working so that we don't need to import millions of builders from overseas.
Well, that's not on those people. That's on bad bosses who want to, exploit migrants and pay them under minimum wage.
Well, the police,
not on them.
Just to return to the Amsterdam story, the police today have said this: we're very proud of him, the hero, but we also want to point out that you need to be very careful if you want to make a citizen's arrest. Most people are not trained for this sort of thing. Interesting statement there from the Dutch police, Amal.
Well, isn't it just the fact that the average man and woman on the street is having to look out more, is having to sort of run, hide and tell? I mean, what on earth are we dealing with? This last week, my daughter, she goes to a university nearby, and we had a lunatic drive a van into the gates of a university. Now, that particular moment was of huge concern because it was, all of a sudden, very real.
I can imagine.
As an individual. Now, is it right that when the Mayor of London says this is all part and parcel of living in a big urban city? No, it's not right. I remember growing up here in London as a child. I didn't have to look behind over my shoulder. Why do we have to do that today?
You did.
No, you
the
didn't.
IRA were pretty prevalent in the 80s and 90s.
The IRA were not.
They? I mean, unless I've got my history wrong, they were pretty prevalent.
The IRA were not rampaging with a knife across Westminster
No, they were just
Bridge.
blowing up cars and shopping centres. So obviously not as bad.
Well, the debate will almost certainly carry on, that's for sure. Now, look, next, independent candidate success continues to rise following the 2024 general election. We've just seen it in some local elections over the last 48 hours. But what does this mean for the future of our democracy? What does this mean for the future of the political landscape? And what does this mean for the future of our diverse, multicultural society? See you in a couple of minutes. You don't want to miss this.
Hi there and welcome to the latest update from the Met Office for GB News. Sunshine and warmth return next week with high pressure building, but for the time being the weather is very changeable. Showers ease overnight with some clear spells, but further rain from a weak system will turn up from the west during Saturday. Here's the high that will arrive from Sunday. For the time being, it is extending somewhat towards the UK, helping to kill off those showers, but some showers remain for the north and west of Scotland. Patchy cloud here and thickening cloud ahead of the aforementioned weather front across Northern Ireland. So generally frost-free with the breezy and cloudier conditions in the northwest. Otherwise, with lighter winds and clear skies extensively. Temperatures dipping to 3 Celsius typically and a little below in some parts of southern UK. But that's where the brightest blue skies would be as we begin Saturday. Yeah, it'll be a fresh feel first thing if you're out and about, but you'll feel the warmth from the sun early on, I suspect. Northern Ireland, that thicker cloud already in place. And for much of western Scotland, already at this stage it is raining. Some showers for the Northern Isles, still some sunshine for the east and south of Scotland. But it's not going to last, unfortunately, if you are keen to view the partial solar eclipse. Don't forget to view it safely. But I think for Scotland and Northern Ireland, not much chance as the cloud thickens here. Likewise for Northern England and parts of Wales. The eclipse takes place between 10 a.m. and midday. But for much of central and eastern and southern England, I think there's a decent chance. Plenty of sunshine continuing. And still warm enough in the southeast by the afternoon with that sunny shine, but cool elsewhere. A cool start to Sunday, a blustery start as well, particularly for the north and east of the UK. But it's at this point that higher pressure is beginning to build, so the wind eases through the day, sunshine develops widely, and we keep that sunshine going throughout much of next week. As a result, temperatures are going to rise up to the low 20s by Thursday.
We're proud to be GB News, the People's Channel. And as you know, we always love to hear your views. Now, there's a new way of getting in touch with us at gbnews.com/yoursay. By commenting, you can be part of a live conversation and join our GB News community. You can even talk to me, Bev Turner, or any of the members of the GB News family.
Join me, Nana Akwe, for an informative, interactive news programme with a difference. It's fun.
No, he didn't say that, Dave.
I'm so surprised.
I think there's an element of truth to that.
Join me from 3 p.m. every weekend, only on GB News, Britain's news channel.
This is Britain's Newsroom, where your voice matters.
It's just astonishing. With expert analysis and honest opinion, we don't just keep you informed.
We bring you unique perspectives you won't see anywhere else.
Can't argue with any of that. When the news happens, it happens here.
On Britain's Newsroom, weekdays from 9:30 a.m.
Only on GB News.
Welcome back to State of the Nation tonight with me, Matt Goodwin, on GB News. Now, get this, independent candidate Noor Jahan Begum won a London by-election in Redbridge and Ilford, defeating Labour's candidate with 1,080 votes to 663. You need to know about this, it's important. Begum, campaigning on local issues like crime and housing, also highlighted justice for Palestine and Ukraine. Now, the victory signals ongoing anger over Labour's stance on Gaza, despite support from high-profile Labour figures, and follows on from the rise in independent candidates, which we saw, don't forget, at the 2024 general election last year. But what does this mean for the future of the UK political landscape? I'm joined tonight by journalist and commentator Khadija Khan. Khadija, thanks for joining us. What's your initial reaction to some of these local election results that we're seeing coming after the national results of the 2024 general election? Because there are people out there who are saying, look, the rise of these independents campaigning on issues like Palestine is actually injecting a dangerous new sectarianism into British politics. What's your take?
Thank you so much for having me, Matt. The thing is to use
the issue of Palestine as a bargaining chip during the election campaign has become a norm in Britain. So this is mere a continuation of that trend that we just witnessed during the general election campaign. But the problem goes much deeper than the flashpoint of what's happening in Gaza, thanks to the relentless campaigning on the part of Islamists who have created theocratic voting base by weaponizing a religious identity. And it's very naive to underestimate the rise of Islamic identity politics in Britain. The Muslim vote is a thing here. And if you want to deny it, it's all up to you. However, it's just as obvious for everyone to see as the day. It is true that many British Muslims, they are concerned about things such as employment, housing, educational opportunities, and a bright, prosperous future. However, it is wrong to, again, I would emphasize that it is wrong to underestimate the influence of religious coercion in Muslim communities. It has been an open secret that religious zealots have weaponized religious identity in Britain to bully and harass people into conforming to their ways.
Sure. Can I just ask a quick question? Let's just take this back to basics, because we've seen groups like Muslim Votes who have been trying to organise along religious lines, trying to organise voters within predominantly Muslim communities to vote in a particular way. This is pretty clear evidence of sectarianism, that politics is being organised along religious, ethnic, racial lines, and obviously many people in Western democracies are not really used to that in the way that perhaps more developing states in other parts of the world are. Just explain to our viewers, if you can, just give us a sense of what is going on within these communities that is allowing this to take place. Because I've just seen the story about a guy who is going to be trying to organise alliances of independent candidates. But what's going on within these communities that is allowing these groups to organise in this way?
Fortunate situation that we allow people within certain communities to use religious identity as a weapon to sway voters in Muslim majority areas. And there has been an organized campaign that was started with the Party of Islam. If you remember, in 2023, it was rejected on technical grounds. However, the purpose of that party was very obvious. That was the Party of Islam. So the identity which is associated with the religion was very much there. And then we saw the Muslim vote that had been very much active during the general election campaign, and they were endorsing candidates, and they were campaigning for those candidates whose primarily focus on Gaza, on what's going on in Gaza and on the issue of Palestine. And then there was a smear campaign by the same group against those candidates who were Muslims, but they were not, towing the line, and they were not conforming to their propaganda.
Indeed.
So
and this led to a couple of Labour MPs saying that they were being personally threatened and harassed during the general election campaign. Well, Khadija, thank you so much for your comments. Aman Bogle, I mean, she's absolutely right, isn't she, that, we have a really big problem here with sectarianism. I've written about this myself in my newsletter. We got surveys that show 40% of British Muslims would like a Muslim-only political party in this country. What we're seeing, Matt, is sectarianism, not just on our streets, but sectarianism on steroids with this. We saw it in the general election last year with the Islamist independents getting elected. Look, I'm old enough to remember when electing local councillors meant, who's going to best put your bids. Potholes and dog poo. Exactly. But if Palestine is more important to you as a political matter than who's going to give you good governance on a local council, well, then it really poses a question whether you're integrated enough into British society. Can I just ask the obvious elephant in the room question? If we're seeing this degree of sectarianism at national general elections like we saw in 2024, where the share of the country's population that is Muslim is 6%, What are we going to see when it's 10, 15, 20%?
Well, we're already seeing that as an early example in the seats with big Muslim populations. So we saw it, John Ashworth losing his seat, and quite remarkably, I thought he was in great delusion when he said last week that multiculturalism has not failed, even though he was chased into a fridge freezer.
So this was a guy that was harassed locally by sectarianism and then came out and said no, multiculturalism is working. Andy, should we be concerned about sectarianism? Because on the left of politics, it's hitting, dare I say, you guys harder than it is people on the right.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, you know, often sectarianism is on that progressive side, or it takes from the progressive supporters. I think it's no shock that there's an independence. There's been independence as long as I can remember. Mansfield independence, Ashfield independence.
Yeah, but not like this.
People organised by
not like this, organising along the lines of foreign conflicts.
I mean, I looked at that leaflet. You know, there were only 2 references to Palestine. You know, almost 95% of it was local issues. So,
what does Palestine got to do with your local bins?
Well, people care about it. People care about it.
I mean, how is she going to fly a Palestine flag from the local council?
She may well do.
Well, the one thing that's for certain is we're going to keep talking about it right here on this channel because it needs to be talked about and it needs to be highlighted because the forgotten majority also care about it. Thank you to my panel for tonight. Thank you to all of you for watching. I'm going to be back next week, Wednesday, 8 p.m. as usual. We head over now to Patrick Christis. Patrick, what's coming up on your show this evening?
Well, hello to my wonderful studio audience. Absolutely fantastic. Well, I can't wait. This is the best way to kickstart your Friday. I've got loads coming up. Just Stop Oil have hung up their high-vis. We got anyone from Just Stop Oil in tonight? No, good. They'd already be glued to something, presumably. We're going to be talking about that. 2-tier justice. The police force in Hertfordshire have just sent 6 uniformed officers round to knock on the door and arrest 2 parents who dared to criticise their local school in a WhatsApp group. So, yeah, we don't live in a police state, though, do we? And also, construction companies are apparently refusing to help build a mosque in the Lake District. So, I'm going to have a top panel. We're also going to be doing Greatest Britain and Union Jackass. All of that is coming your way for the next 2 hours with this wonderful live audience again. Here we go. We will all see you after your weather.
Expect a warm front, moving from the kitchen right through to the rest of the house. Boxed Boilers, sponsors of weather on GB News.
Hi there and welcome to the latest update from the Met Office for GB News. Sunshine and warmth return next week with high pressure building, but for the time being the weather is very changeable. Showers ease overnight with some clear spells, but further rain from a weak system will turn up from the west during Saturday. Here's the high that will arrive from Sunday. For the time being, it is extending somewhat towards the UK, helping to kill off those showers, but some showers remain for the north and west of Scotland. Patchy cloud here and thickening cloud ahead of the aforementioned weather front across Northern Ireland. So generally frost-free with the breezy and cloudier conditions in the northwest. Otherwise, with lighter winds and clear skies extensively. Temperatures dipping to 3 Celsius typically and a little below in some parts of southern UK. But that's where the brightest blue skies would be as we begin Saturday. Yeah, it'll be a fresh feel first thing if you're out and about, but you'll feel the warmth from the sun early on, I suspect. Northern Ireland, that thicker cloud already in place. And for much of western Scotland, already at this stage it is raining. Some showers for the Northern Isles, still some sunshine for the east and south of Scotland. But it's not going to last, unfortunately, if you are keen to view the partial solar eclipse. Don't forget to view it safely. But I think for Scotland and Northern Ireland, not much chance as the cloud thickens here. Likewise for Northern England and parts of Wales. The eclipse takes place between 10 a.m. and midday. But for much of central and eastern and southern England, I think there's a decent chance. Plenty of sunshine continuing. And still warm enough in the southeast by the afternoon with that sunny shine, but cool elsewhere. A cool start to Sunday, a blustery start as well, particularly for the north and east of the UK. But it's at this point that higher pressure is beginning to build, so the wind eases through the day, sunshine develops widely, and we keep that sunshine going throughout much of next week. As a result, temperatures are going to rise up to the low 20s by Thursday.
Expect a warm front, moving from the kitchen right through to the rest of the house. Boxed Boilers, sponsors of weather on GB News.
It's the final week to see how you could spruce up your spring, as we have an incredible £17,777 in tax-free cash to be won. And if that wasn't enough, we'll also give you the latest Mulberry handbag, and not one, but two sought-after designer watches. Make sure you don't miss out, as lines close on the 4th of April. For another chance to win the lot, text cash to 63232. One entry costs £2 plus one standard network rate message, or text bonus to 63232. 5 entries cost £5 plus one standard network rate message. Go to gbnews.com/win. Entries start from just £2. Call 0903 681 3232. Calls cost £2 plus your network access charge. Or post your name and number to GB12 PO Box 8690 Derby DE1 9TT. UK only. Entrants must be 18 or over. Lines close at 6 p.m. on the 4th of April. Please check the closing time if listening or watching on demand. Good luck.
The royal family is an enduring symbol of tradition, unity and pride for Britain. At GB News, we celebrate what makes this country great. In our new royal newsletter series, you can join me, Cameron Walker, for Inside the Palace, an exclusive look every week that takes you beyond the gates and brings you the very latest from those at the heart of the monarchy. Never miss a royal moment again. Sign up now. Go to gbnews.com/royal newsletter and get the latest straight to your inbox.